My parents always made it clear, though not in words but in actions, that my brother was the center of their world. I noticed it as a child when he got away with things I would have been punished for. I felt it again as a teenager when he was praised for his smallest accomplishments while my own achievements were brushed aside. But I never thought it would cut so deep in adulthood. The day I realized that my parents had chosen him over me, fully and without hesitation, something inside me cracked. My name is Laura, and I am 34 years old. For years I tried to convince myself that I was imagining it, that I was simply being sensitive or dramatic. But when my brother asked them for help, financial help, emotional help, even legal help, they never hesitated. And when I needed them most, during the hardest period of my life, they turned their backs on me with the same coldness a stranger would show. It happened 3 years ago. I had just gone through a brutal divorce, the kind that leaves you shattered and unsure of who you are. My ex-husband, Daniel, left me with nothing but debts and the weight of shame. I swallowed my pride and asked my parents for a loan, not even a gift, just a small amount to help me get back on my feet. Instead of compassion, I got silence, followed by words that still echo in my head. "We can't help you, Laura. We've already given so much to your brother. You'll have to manage on your own." I remember hanging up the phone that night, sitting in my dark apartment and staring at the walls. My brother, Michael, had just been bailed out of yet another reckless decision, an investment gone wrong that cost him tens of thousands. And my parents had stepped in with money they claimed they didn't have for me. The betrayal stung, but more than that, the realization that their love came with conditions I could never meet crushed me. That night, I made a silent promise. I would survive without them. I would rebuild my life alone, no matter how hard it was. But even as I hardened my heart, a part of me still longed for their approval. What I didn't know then was that life had a cruel way of balancing the scales, and soon, it wouldn't be me who needed them. It would be them, crawling back after the very son they had chosen over me tore their world apart. After that phone call, I tried to create some distance. But distance doesn't come easily when your parents live only 20 minutes away and insist on inviting you to every family dinner. I went anyway, more out of obligation than desire, but each time I walked into their house, the weight in my chest grew heavier. Michael would already be there, his arms slung over the back of a chair like he owned the room. My parents would hang on his every word, laughing at stories about his latest business ventures, which were nothing more than reckless gambles dressed up as ambition. They would ask him if he needed anything, if he was stressed, if they could do more. And me? I was the background noise. Asked about my day only in passing, dismissed before I could finish a sentence. Point one evening, the silence became unbearable. I had spent the whole week juggling 2 jobs to keep up with rent and bills, running on 4 hours of sleep a night. I hoped, naively, that maybe they would notice how tired I looked. Instead, my mother leaned across the table and said, "Laura, can you help clear the plates so Michael can tell us more about his plans?" I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. My father chuckled and added, "Yes, we don't want to interrupt him. This could be his big breakthrough." Something inside me snapped. I pushed my chair back and said, "You want me to play maid so Michael can brag about losing more money? Do you even hear yourselves?" The room fell silent. Michael smirked, as if enjoying the spectacle. My mother's lips tightened and my father muttered, "There's no need to be dramatic, Laura. He's your brother. We support him because he's trying." And what am I doing? I shot back. Killing myself with work just to survive, while you pretend I don't exist? For a moment, I thought they might actually reflect on my words. But then my mother sighed, shaking her head. "You've always been so resentful. You should be happy for him, not jealous." That word, jealous, burned hotter than fire. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked out without saying another word. That night, I swore I would never sit at their dinner table again. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Because as much as they dismissed me, I also knew something they refused to see. Michael's arrogance was going to catch up with him. And when it did, the whole house of cards would collapse. It didn't take long for the first storm to hit. About 6 months after that disastrous dinner, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was trembling, something I wasn't used to hearing. "Laura, we just need to borrow a little money. Just until next month," she said softly. As if ashamed, I nearly laughed. These were the same parents who told me they couldn't spare a cent for me when I was drowning in debt. Yet here they were, asking me for help. But I swallowed the bitterness and asked, "What happened?" Her voice dropped lower. "Your brother, he convinced us to invest in one of his ventures. He promised it was safe, that it would double in a year. But now the money is gone." I froze. "How much?" She hesitated, then whispered, "120,000. My chest tightened. $120,000, money they had saved for retirement, for medical bills, for security in their old age, just gone. I could barely process it. When I confronted my father later, his response stunned me even more. Michael didn't mean for it to happen. He was misled. Besides, he's our son. We had to give him a chance. A chance. That was the word they had never given me, but what struck me most was Michael's reaction. When I saw him at a family gathering a week later, he acted as though nothing had happened. He strolled in wearing a brand new watch, laughing loudly, and when I asked, "Where did the money go, Michael?" he smirked and said, "You wouldn't understand business, Laura." I wanted to scream. My parents, sitting there silently, avoided eye contact. It was as if they had decided to protect him even while he bled them dry. That night, I walked home shaking with anger, not only at Michael but at my parents' blindness. For years they had chosen him over me. Now, for the first time, I realized they weren't just choosing him. They were destroying themselves in the process. And I knew this was only the beginning of his betrayal. 2 months after the lost investment, the truth finally clawed its way out. My father called me one evening, his voice heavy and low. "Laura, I need to tell you something. Michael didn't just lose the money. He lied to us." I gripped the phone tighter. "What do you mean lied?" "He never invested it," my father said after a long pause. "He used the money to pay off his gambling debts." The room spun around me. All those years of watching them worship him, defend him, make excuses for him. And this was what he had done with their trust? I wanted to scream into the phone, to shout "I told you so," but instead, all I said was, "And you're surprised?" My father didn't answer. For the first time in my life, I heard shame in his voice. The fallout was immediate. Bill collectors started calling their house. My mother admitted they had refinanced their home to give Michael the money, putting their own stability at risk. And Michael? He disappeared. For weeks, he didn't return calls, didn't show his face. When he finally reappeared, he acted like the victim. "They forced me into it," he shouted during one of their arguments, slamming his hand on the table. "You don't know the pressure I was under." What was I supposed to do? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My parents sat in silence, eyes downcast, as if they still couldn't bring themselves to stand against him. I looked at Michael and said, "You were supposed to be honest. You were supposed to take responsibility. But all you ever do is take." He sneered at me, then stormed out, the front door slamming so hard the walls shook. That night, I saw the first cracks in my parents' loyalty. My mother sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, her hands trembling around a cold cup of tea. My father's eyes looked older, defeated. For once, they didn't defend him. For once, they didn't call me jealous or dramatic. And that's when I knew Michael's betrayal had cut them deeper than they wanted to admit. But the real collapse hadn't even started yet. It all unraveled faster than any of us could have imagined. Within weeks, the phone calls from collectors turned into letters, threatening ones. My parents' mailbox filled with overdue notices, red-stamped warnings, and foreclosure threats. I saw the stack sitting on their kitchen counter one Sunday afternoon when I stopped by, and my heart sank. "Why didn't you tell me it was this bad?" I asked, flipping through the pile. My mother's eyes welled up with tears. "We thought we could fix it before you found out," she whispered. My father sat stiffly in his chair, his pride bruised beyond recognition. "It's not her problem," he muttered. "We'll handle it." But they couldn't handle it, not anymore. The truth was brutal. Michael had drained them dry, and now the banks were circling like vultures. When Michael finally showed up after weeks of silence, it was like adding gasoline to a fire. He strolled in as if nothing had happened, wearing a new jacket, his hair slicked back, and when my father confronted him, voice shaking, demanding answers, Michael did something I never thought I'd see. He laughed. "You're overreacting," he said, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. "I'll figure it out. Just relax." "Relax," my father exploded, his fist slamming against the table. "We could lose this house, Michael. We could lose everything because of you." For the first time in my life, I saw my father's face turn red with rage. My mother burst into tears, begging Michael to take responsibility, but he stood up, shrugged, and said coldly, "That's not my problem." Then he walked out the door. That moment broke something in them. I could see it. The years of loyalty, of excuses, of blind love collapsing like a house of cards. My parents had always chosen Michael, no matter the cost. But as the walls of their life closed in, they finally began to realize the son they worshipped had left them to drown. And though I wanted to feel vindicated, to scream, "Now you know how it feels," all I felt was a heavy, aching sadness. Because no matter what, they were still my parents, and I wasn't sure I had the strength to watch them fall apart. It was late on a Wednesday evening when I heard the knock. At first, I thought it was a neighbor, maybe someone complaining about the noise from the upstairs apartment. But when I opened the door, I froze. My parents were standing there, my father looking smaller than I had ever seen him, my mother clutching her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Laura," my mother whispered, her voice breaking. We didn't know where else to go. For a moment, I just stared at them. The people who had dismissed me, chosen Michael over me time and time again, were now standing at my door, exhausted, broken, and desperate. I let them in, though part of me wanted to close the door right there. They sat on my worn-out couch, glancing around my tiny apartment as if realizing for the first time the life I had built without them. My father cleared his throat, his pride struggling against his desperation. "The bank, they're moving forward with foreclosure. We have 60 days to pay back what we owe, or we'll lose the house." I felt my chest tighten. "And what about Michael? Where is he?" My father's jaw clenched. My mother answered instead, her voice trembling.
"He's gone.
He won't answer our calls. We think he left town." For a long time, silence filled the room. I could feel their shame pressing into the air, their eyes avoiding mine. Finally, my mother reached for my hand. "We know we failed you, Laura. We chose him over you, and it was a mistake. But now we don't have anyone else." I pulled my hand back slowly. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw every bitter memory back in their faces. But instead, I asked quietly, "And what do you expect me to do?" My father's eyes met mine, filled with something I had never seen before, fear. "We need your help." The irony was suffocating. The daughter they had cast aside was now the only lifeline they had left. And in that moment, standing in my small living room, I realized their betrayal had brought them here, but what I chose to do next would define not just their future, but mine as well. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, torn between rage and pity. My parents had left me to fight alone when I was drowning in debt, yet now they stood at my door begging for the very help they denied me. Part of me wanted to shut them out, to let them taste the same loneliness I had endured. But another part, the daughter who still wanted to believe in family, hesitated. The next morning, I sat them down at my small kitchen table. My father looked tired, his hands shaking slightly as he wrapped them around a mug of untouched coffee. My mother's eyes were red from crying. "I can't give you money," I said firmly. "I barely keep myself afloat as it is. But I can help you figure out a plan." My father's shoulders slumped. For the first time in his life, he looked defeated, stripped of his pride. My mother reached across the table, whispering, "Anything, Laura. We'll listen." It was almost laughable. Now they would listen. After years of brushing off my warnings about Michael, after years of calling me jealous or dramatic, suddenly my voice mattered. I told them about credit counseling, about restructuring payments, about selling assets before the bank seized them. It wasn't a magic solution, but it was a start. As I spoke, I saw something shift in their eyes. Not hope, exactly, but a recognition that I was no longer the child they dismissed. I was the one holding the pieces together, but just as we began to talk through options, the doorbell rang. And when I opened it, standing there with his trademark smirk was Michael. "Well, isn't this cozy?" he said, stepping inside uninvited. "Family meeting without me?" My mother gasped, my father stiffened, and I felt the air in the room change. Michael's betrayal had brought them to their knees, but his return promised to tear open wounds that hadn't even begun to heal. Michael walked in like he owned the place, his shoes dragging mud onto my rug, his jacket tossed carelessly onto a chair. My parents sat frozen, their eyes fixed on him with a mix of anger and relief, like they couldn't decide whether to scream or embrace him. I broke the silence first. "You've got some nerve showing up here after what you did." Michael smirked, leaning against the wall as if nothing could touch him. "Relax, Laura."
I came to explain.
Things got complicated. Complicated? My voice cracked with fury. "You stole $120,000 from the people who worshipped you. You left them to face foreclosure while you disappeared like a coward. That's not complicated. It's betrayal." My father finally spoke, his voice low but shaking. "Is it true, Michael? Did you gamble it away?" Michael shrugged, his eyes darting to the floor. "Look, I had debts. Dangerous people were after me. I didn't have a choice." "No choice." My mother's voice rose, trembling with rage. "We gave you everything. We trusted you. And you threw it all away." For a moment, Michael's mask slipped. His smirk faded, and he looked almost cornered. But then he straightened and snapped back. "Don't act like you're saints. You always expected me to succeed, to carry the family's name. I just did what I had to do." I stepped closer, my fists clenched.
No, Michael.
"You did what you wanted to do. You lied, you stole, and you left them to pick up your mess. You don't get to twist this into anyone else's fault." The room shook with the weight of a silence. My mother broke down, sobbing into her hands. My father stood, his voice breaking as he said, "Get out, Michael. For once in your life, leave before you cause more damage." Michael stared at them, stunned. For the first time, their loyalty had a crack wide enough for him to see through. He grabbed his jacket, muttered something under his breath, and slammed the door behind him. When the sound of his footsteps faded, my parents sat in silence, staring at me, not him. And in that moment, I realized something had shifted forever. After Michael stormed out, the silence in my apartment was suffocating. My mother sat hunched over, her hands trembling against her lap, while my father stared blankly at the floor. The man who had always seemed unshakable now looked decades older, worn down by disappointment and shame. Finally, my father spoke, his voice hoarse. "I should have seen it sooner. We gave him everything. Our money, our trust, our loyalty. And he used us." Tears streamed down my mother's face. "We lost the house, Laura. The foreclosure went through this morning. It's gone. The home we built together, where you grew up, it's gone." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. I pictured the familiar rooms, the walls filled with family photos, the kitchen that smelled of Sunday dinners. And now all of it was being handed over to strangers, erased because of Michael's greed. I wanted to be angry. Angry at Michael, angry at my parents for refusing to see the truth when it mattered. But as I looked at their broken faces, all I felt was sorrow. They had chosen him over me for years, and this was the price they paid. "We'll have to start over," I said quietly. "It won't be easy, but you're not alone. I may not have much, but I'll help where I can." My mother reached across the table and took my hand, clutching it like a lifeline. "We don't deserve your kindness, Laura. Not after how we treated you. But thank you." For the first time in my life, I felt their words carried no conditions, no favoritism, no dismissals. Just raw regret. The betrayal had cost them everything, but it also opened their eyes. And as painful as it was, I realized this was the closest thing to healing we might ever get. But before healing could begin, there was one final step left, facing Michael once and for all. It was a week after my parents lost the house when Michael showed up one last time. He didn't come with apologies or remorse, he came with demands. He knocked on my apartment door, his face pale but his arrogance still intact. "You have to help me," he said flatly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I'm in trouble again, and I need money." For a moment, I just stared at him. All the years of favoritism, all the sacrifices my parents made for him, all the destruction he left behind, it all flashed before me. And then I realized something. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt nothing. "No," I said simply. "You've taken enough. From them, from me, from this family. This is where it ends." He tried to argue, his voice rising, but this time my parents stood beside me. My father, the same man who once defended Michael at every turn, looked him in the eye and said, "You're not welcome here anymore." My mother, tears in her eyes, whispered, "We can't save you, Michael. You made your choices." Michael's face twisted with rage, but he saw that nothing he said could change our decision. For the first time in his life, the door was closed to him, not just literally but forever. He stormed off into the night, and none of us followed. As the silence settled, my parents and I sat together in my small living room. We had lost the house, lost years to broken trust, but in that moment, we finally found something we had never shared before. Honesty. I turned to them and said softly, "You can't change the past, but you can choose who you stand with now. And I'll stand with you, as long as you stand with me too." They nodded, their eyes wet with tears, and for the first time in decades, I felt like a daughter who mattered. And that, dear listener, is where my story ends. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Love without accountability isn't love, it's blindness. And blindness always comes with a price. Thank you for listening to my story until the very end. If it spoke to you, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. It means more than you know. And remember, never be afraid to stand up for your worth, even when the people closest to you can't see it.